we'll jump right into it. I'll try to provide a few examples, global examples of what PayPal is seeing, as well as some key trends we're seeing here for Asia-Pacific-based companies that are looking to go global or expand their marketplace, and key trends that we think are very, very important to take a look at. So to give you an idea of what we're seeing globally, the emergence of sort of modern spice routes or trade routes between various countries. So for example, a group of merchants in China trading heavily with consumers in the US, or a group of consumers in the UK trading heavily with merchants in Australia. Those spice routes, as we call it, or trade corridors, are growing very, very rapidly across border. Give you an idea of the scale and the size of this business. Last year in 2013, PayPal processed about $180 billion worth of goods and services, both digital and physical goods. And 25% of that was cross-border between various countries. And another stat of note, $27 billion in mobile payments. Very, very strong growth year over year. It's about doubling every year. It's exciting to me. I'm a mobile guy I've been a mobile guy for about 15 years. You don't need to convince me of how exciting things are right now. Some stats that might be of interest to you folks. Now, these are stats from Asia-Pacific-based PayPal merchants, a cross-section that are gaming, that are selling to the world. And I'll leave it up if you want to take a photo. I'll leave it up. I won't go off this screen for a while. You may not be able to see it. Buyer engagement, where we take a very, very close look at buyer engagement. These are consumers that are coming back to the same merchant, coming back to the same game to purchase and purchase again. The vast majority of the Asia-Pacific-based merchants, their consumers are coming back a lot. And 37% and 42% between the medium frequency and the high frequency buyers respectively. And in number of transactions, this might mirror some of your own internal numbers as well. You'll see a spike in the initial single purchase people. They come, they try, they make one purchase, and they might not ever come back. But as you can see, as you move to the right here, the number of transactions, 3 to 5 transactions, 19%, 6 to 10 transactions, 12%, and then 10 or more transactions, your heavy users, your whales, so to speak, 19%. So these are the companies that are out there trying to build relationships, strong relationships with consumers, and pouring efforts into retaining those consumers, of course, increasing ARPU. And then finally, the buyer income range. You may, your statistics might not reflect based on the fact that you don't know these. We have a deep understanding, of course, who these people are because they're PayPal users. We have their age, we have we know where they live, and so on. This actually surprised me when I saw it. It's actually a sort of normal bell curve of distribution. The vast majority of consumers, again, these are worldwide consumers that are transacting with APAC-based game developers. They are in the primarily in the 30,000 to 75,000 USD income per year range. Now, this would reflect the fact that PayPal brings 143 million users to the consumers. Big concentration in North America, big concentration in Western Europe. That will skew those statistics, just to help qualify for that. Some interesting news. Things are changing very, very quickly. This is something that affects us, and it affects, I think, a lot of consumers out there. They're now able to use PayPal in 12 countries on Google Play. It's exciting news for us, but it shows that the ecosystem is changing very quickly, and payment, of course, is not easy, it's not fun, but it's critically important to all of us here in our livelihoods. So we're excited about that, and excited about that partnership with Google. Now, one of the things that we, getting in sort of the meat of the presentation, data analytics, critical to the success, something, of course, that you know, and we'll try to give you our slice, how we view why statistics and which statistics are really, really important. As the industry, the gaming industry, has migrated from something of one single item purchase, whether it be the DVD, remember those days, DVD, to the download to the PC, to free to play. Yes, that's something we all know and love. But of course, it's harder to get consumers to actually start making purchases. Of course, statistics being even more important. Tracking results with KPIs such as daily active users, you know that as well as I do. But of course, using the tools, some of you folks might actually be in the room that have tools that you would either recommend, or even tool providers like App Annie and Distimo and so on. Those are the folks that help you understand not only what's performing in your game, on your site, on your mobile app, but also how your competitors are doing as well. It's got to be a science, and I'll get to that in a moment. We use the notion of the player adoption funnel. You may have seen that a couple times in variations to that. Before, of course, the classic game monetization, it used to be awareness, marketing, advertising, and then purchase. Of course, we've got to get now consumers to trial in the free to play model and adoption. It's so incredibly important to get consumers all the way down here and understand where they are actually succeeding and going down the funnel and where they drop off. Without proper statistics, you won't actually understand why consumers are either playing your game and paying or not. Very, very important. And I know you know this, I'm just re-emphasizing. And of course, beyond adoption and paying, why are consumers maybe paying once or paying a few times, but how will you get them to become your advocates? How will they become your super players where they pull in their own social network to then become viral? Again, statistics to help you understand behavior, not just numbers, but the why. And that's the gap that I think many providers, game developers don't yet understand, simply because sometimes it's an afterthought, or resources or lack of the folks that are doing it on a day-to-day basis. This is an example of a global developer and distributor, is a merchant partner of ours. They were kind enough to allow us to use their story, but we're not using their name. They had a global brand and a global launch of a new title. And they decided that, yes, they would actually go global, but they found that with one market, Russia being specific, different slide. Southeast Asia, when they launched their game, they found that the consumer uptake wasn't as good as the rest of the regions, North America, Europe, and the rest of Asia. And without data, they could have guessed, was it the marketing? Was it the pricing? Was it the localization or lack of localization? Should they have added that one additional language to Southeast Asia? They might have not known. They might have taken 3 or 4 months. Great example, what they found was they were having a gap between registration and actual activation. So then they dug in deeper. They had the statistics. They had the data that told them something was wrong. They didn't actually have people here on the ground to tell them exactly mechanically what was wrong. They quickly logged into VPN, realized something was misconfigured with their local data center. In a matter of 24 hours, they had that solved. But without having this data, you could spend months and months and months trying to fix something that didn't need to be fixed at all. Or, in the opposite, you can fine-tune things and make things even better. Get consumers down that funnel as quickly and easily as possible. Of course, the biggest drop-off we see is at payment. We spend 99% of our time talking about conversion in payment. Okay, moving on to globalized distribution. Some important aspects. I've highlighted a few on the slide here. On your left, company considerations for localization, as well as product considerations of localization, again, expansion globally outside of your existing market. So the first I've highlighted, accepting payments and currency management. You already know where you want to go. You already know what regions you want to go expand into. Don't forget about payments and currency management. Global versus local developers. We work with developers around the world. One of our large merchant partners says they actually, not only do they use individual teams in each market, they spend a year localizing for both North America as well as in Western Europe. An entire year once their title has been developed. They spend a lot of resources with local teams. That may not be within your purview. You may not be resourced, but don't forget, that may present a good opportunity for you to address certain market needs. So for example, the monetization potential, each market might be different. So for example, consumers in Japan, they might actually be interested in monetizing one way. They might be interested in jumping levels. I'm just giving you an example. Versus in the US, they want all you can eat based on culture as well as what they're accustomed to. So be cognizant of that as you develop your expansion strategy. Local regulations, did you know in Korea, in some cases, if for underage kids, they can't play after a certain time of day. Don't market at 2 in the morning to consumers that can't play your game right then and there, can't download. Very, very important. Local game tastes, you folks are probably better at that than I. Key player motivators, I'll talk about a little bit about that as well as your level of localization that you invest. While we're still talking about sort of key considerations both in the company as well as the product, if you are, let's say, in Southeast Asia now, or let's say you're in Taiwan, you want to expand into China, expand into Southeast Asia, or expand into the US, risk actually is a huge issue, risk and anti-fraud. There are many folks out there that do it. Just make sure that that is built into your plans. From the graph behind me, this is one of our merchant partners. They went out and expanded into a particular market. They blew their entire Q3 based on someone hacking into their systems. They thought they were having a great weekend. Someone else was having a great weekend in their systems at their expense. And again, digital goods, we see this quite commonly because it's so easy to move money around because, of course, it's digital. Be careful of that as well as build that into your plans. Now, on the right, as far as product and player motivations, 3 examples that I'll give you. This will vary based on your game, based on your audience, and based on your market, really to drive game success. One is the game aesthetics, the look and feel, everything that you folks work on. The achievement, hard games, difficult games aren't actually that fun to play. People want to succeed in games. People want to win. And in some markets, in some cultures, they want to tell everybody. They want to tell their social network. They want to tell their family. That's the notion of social network is changing rapidly, especially as it impacts this business. So those are things to consider of how those might influence how you market a game, how you build a game, and how you build the interaction of one social group or not, depending on Japan. Let's say Taiwan might have this similar type of social achievement and telling one's friends, whereas the US or Sweden, very, very different. Do have those into consideration. Common global expansion pain points that we see on a day-to-day basis around the world, not just here in Southeast Asia. Really very self-explanatory, but oftentimes overlooked. Security concerns, someone gets into your payment processing or your partner's server, and you think you're having a great month. If those alarms aren't set properly, you may very well be way down the path of some actual fraud. Be very careful of that. Scalable profitability, how wide do you want the funnel to be in allowing consumers to go through that funnel, the consumer adoption funnel I was talking about earlier, in order to actually transact, to become your advocate, to tell users, make sure you structure the game that it's smooth, but that there are ways that you can prove the authentication of your user. Different payment methods, what is popular here in Singapore may vary slightly here over in Malaysia. Forget about Brazil. It's a very, very different economy, very, very different payment methods. You have to be customized for each individual market for payment methods. And of course, cultural and language differences, you know that, and currency exchange. You wouldn't believe when all is said and done at the end of the year when someone goes through and adds up currency exchange costs, both in overhead. All of a sudden you're dealing with 6, 7, 10. We deal in 26 currencies. You wouldn't believe how expensive it is to move money around the world, especially when you're collecting from partners, being paid in USD, converting to Singapore dollars or RMB or what have you. It's very, very expensive. Make sure that's built into your business plans in the beginning. Now, this was actually the story I was beginning to tell you earlier. Another global partner of ours, merchant, they actually wanted to launch their title globally, and they thought, well, Russia, they could do it on their own. They've done a few titles in Russia, but they really wanted to meet the needs of the Russian consumer, as well as tap resources that they might not have actually had or would have had to build on the ground itself. So they partnered with a company that had both the user base as well as the local knowledge, the marketing channels, and the localization. It was a very, very successful launch for them with a partner. I gave them a call a couple days ago. 2.5 years into it, they're still working very closely with that partner. They've found a win-win solution with that partner in a market where they could have done it themselves, but they decided to work with a partner to scale even bigger. So scale, just because, let's say, an Australian provider could also add New Zealand to your distribution, doesn't mean that that's the right choice. There might be a niche player in New Zealand that could really grow your game there 10x. So obviously you're scalable, but a right partnership in win-win is important. All right, so always paramount. Be scientific about conversion rates with your partners. Don't simply supply marketing assets and source code to your partners. Understand that business where they are. If they're in Eastern Europe or Central Europe, help them be their partners in success too. Don't just depend on your distribution partner. And make sure you structure your partnership economically and commercially so that you have a vested interest. Demand an intimate understanding of your joint business, not only of your partner, but of your staff that are working with your partner on a day-to-day basis. Make that the understanding that you have a shared risk and shared success. And sometimes the business development guy, I used to be one of those guys, I'm guilty of it, just wanted to get the deal done. But this true partnership is where two companies enter into a long-term relationship to grow a business together, not just one title, but hopefully a series of titles that lasts for years to come. Okay, while we're still on the subject of partnerships, we'll talk a little bit about acquiring and monetization, as well as the payment stuff. Monetization and acquiring, you know the drill. Publishers, ad networks, social platforms. Now, what we're seeing, of course, is the emergence of the messaging apps really starting to take hold. Of course, Facebook being one of the first. But things like KakaoTalk and Line and WeChat, really, really effective means to reach new audiences that would potentially be very, very expensive for you to reach otherwise, or just almost impossible. These folks are in messaging-based conversations with these consumers every day. Don't leave that out. Even if your partner might not have a deal with them, or they might be working with a competitor, do think about the opportunity that these new social networks bring to bring an audience to you. Alternate app stores, without a doubt, they're still out there, especially in markets like China, extremely viable. And then HTML5, and we call it sort of the omni-channel experience. Two separate ideas I sort of bundled into one. HTML5, you would not believe how much volume, how many dollars, yen, and so on, euros are being transacted in HTML browsers, on tablets, and on mobile devices. It's phenomenal. We don't talk a lot about it in the industry because there aren't that many official statistics. But it's a very, very easy way to take your transaction fee from 30% down to 4 or 5%. It might be the most profitable piece of your franchise. So don't forget that. As well as don't forget omni-channel. A lot of consumers we still see about 24 to 25% of consumers are playing or purchasing on multiple channels. They're at work when they should be working on that report or the deck that they promised several weeks ago they're actually playing games. They're at lunch, they're on their iPhone, they're on the tablet in the afternoon or in the evening. If you have the resources to have a multi-touch, an omni-channel relationship with that consumer, that's a much deeper and richer relationship. And remember, all of us and all of your consumers only have so much time, which is actually the bigger problem, and resources to spend. Money and discretionary time very critical. If you can reach out and interact with your consumers in a multi-platform way, much more effective. Okay, payment, the e-wallets as the PayPals of the world, prepaid cards, carrier billing, direct bank billing, and card payments. That mix will vary market to market. Don't forget that. Just adding one provider and then hoping for the best globally, it's not going to cut it. You need to localize, at least by region. Western Europe is different from Central Europe, which is different from Eastern Europe. Be cognizant of that, of your expansion plans, and help and work with your partner, and your distributor or other partner in order to optimize that. Okay, second to last slide. This is something that I actually have this slide on my desk. Begin with the end in mind. We don't have a lot to talk about it, but before your teams write one line of code, make sure you understand what you're after. What does success look like in each market? And make sure you track to that as you build your plans out. Scalable partnerships will be driven based on those KPIs you agree on. Choose speed over perfection. Doesn't need too much explanation. Build your user base over time. Build in your current game, upselling to your next game. You may not even have it on the books yet in 9 months, 12 months, but build it in so you can migrate your users with you. And finally, be aware of the monetization pendulum. I don't think that'll be termed or coined today. It's a little bit too wordy. But just because the herd mentality is going one way doesn't mean there's a whole lot of opportunity over here. So keep that in mind. With that, I'll close. Just to recap, data analytics at the core of a game's success. Told you about the story about the company that realized they had a problem with a misconfigured server. They could have spent months trying to figure out the mix, but with data statistics, they solved that pretty quickly. Globalized distribution, but localized products. I talked to you also about the Russia example. And then finally, win-win partnerships are more critical than ever. If you don't believe that you're entering into a partnership that's win-win, where that distributor or that partner has your best interest in mind, go out and find something else. With that, thank you very much.